Congressman John Faso from New York's 19th District, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Spencer. Nice to be with you.
For starters, can you tell us a little bit about your district and the kinds of agriculture we might find in it?
My district is the second largest district geographically in New York State. It stretches from the Vermont border on the northeast in northern Rensselaer County to the Pennsylvania line along the Delaware River. So from a geographic standpoint, it's about the size of the states of Connecticut and Delaware combined. So it's a big district, mid-Hudson Valley, Catskills, out to central New York. So it's a large geographic area in the state. Our agriculture is really varied. We got a lot of dairy farms. I'd say that's about half of the value of the agricultural production in our district is dairy. Still a lot of family farms, a lot of farms right now that are struggling. Others are working hard to modernize. We're seeing more robotic milkers, for instance, among many of the farmers. Also heavily invested in fruit crops, apples, pears, peaches, apricots, you name it, we have it. A lot of specialty crops. Vegetables, producers of yogurt, of cheese, of berries, you name it, we've got it. Because we're so close to New York City, we're just a couple hours north drive of New York City. A lot of our farmers market their products down in the city, and a lot of them are taking advantage of innovative means of marketing themselves. A milk producer bottling their own milk and selling it and getting that extra added value. So we're seeing a lot of that as farming has to accommodate itself to the market pressures that we face.
Now, one of the committees that you serve on here in Congress is the House Agriculture Committee. For you, why was it important to be a member of that committee?
Well, my predecessor, Chris Gibson, was a member of the committee. He really enjoyed it, and I'm one of 9 Republicans from New York State. We're in the majority in the House, and there's no other Republican on the Ag Committee from New York on the House Agriculture Committee. So we felt it was important to have a representative from the state on the majority side of the aisle. And there are a couple of Democrats on the committee as well from New York. But by and large, we're pretty outnumbered in the Northeast on that committee. And my colleagues who maybe represent larger commodity crop producers around the country have a little bit more weight on the committee than those of us from the Northeast. So we're a hardy bunch, and we want to make sure that our farmers and our producers are well represented. So we endeavor to do that every day.
And when you're discussing things that you want to accomplish on that committee, the priorities as it were, what are those priorities for you specifically on the House Ag?
Well, I'd like to see a reform of the margin protection program, which has not worked and not served the dairy industry well, and we're working on that. I'd like to also see a new organic title in the bill. This is a big issue for us to try to make sure that we have veracity and truthfulness in the certification of products as being organic. So we want to give the Ag Department a little more authority in this regard, and want to make sure that if someone is marketing a product to the consumer as organic, that it truly is. Also concerned about invasive species and pests that are common that we're facing, that our agricultural producers are facing. And so there are a number of issues. I'd like to see some reforms in the SNAP program. And I want to make sure that we have a good, financially viable farm credit system and a farm commodity support system. And I've worked closely with Chairman Conaway. I think he's a terrific leader. He really has a very good handle on the issues. I've traveled with him to Canada to talk to the Canadians about NAFTA and talk about some of their dairy policies that are a little discriminatory against U.S. producers. So I'm looking forward to the Farm Bill in 2018, and I think with Chairman Conaway there, we're definitely going to get it done on a timely basis.
Also serving on budget and transportation in the House, wondering why you see those as committees that are important to your district.
Well, transportation is a critical ingredient. We know the nation's infrastructure, whether it's roads and bridges or transit or water and sewer, that infrastructure is often aging. I represent an older part of the country. We have a lot of historic structures, and we have a lot of older communities that have 100-year-old, 75-year-old water systems. I remember when we replaced the water mains when we did a state project in the village of Kinderhook in Columbia County, where I live. The water mains were leaking like a sieve, and they were 75 years old. And so it's really important. And the other issue in rural New York, as it is across the country, is broadband. We have great needs to extend that fiber cable all throughout the area, because that's vital for not only our businesses and our agricultural producers, but for kids trying to do their homework. So I'm really intent on trying to make sure we have a robust infrastructure package next year. I've worked on a few proposals so far. The revenue is the big issue, and it's going to be incumbent on Congress to find the revenue, because we can't allow our roads and bridges and other infrastructure that is vital to our economic security to continue to crumble.
Mm-hmm. Now, you previously served in the New York legislature and finished your time there in 2002, and have made some runs at some other things, but ultimately your time in public service did end in 2002 until it started back up again when you were elected to Congress. What was it that drew you back to wanting to hold a position in the form of public service?
As you mentioned, I had run for statewide. I ran for governor of New York in 2006 against a fellow named Eliot Spitzer. I lost in a very strong Democratic year, and my wife and I decided never again. We're not going to run for office again. And I was one of the people that assisted my predecessor, Chris Gibson, in running back in 2010. He won the seat and decided early in 2015 he wasn't going to run again. So it opened up the seat. I had long been interested in the House, and I've always been interested in public policy issues. So I just sense that we need people who are, I say, in the common sense middle in our country. There's a very big polarization in our country on the left and right, and I find if you sit and talk with people, even if they may be on the opposite side of the aisle and may have different philosophy than you have, you can often find areas of common interest and common ground. And I think that's often what's lacking in our country today. So this polarization in our nation's discourse is one of the reasons I ran. And I'm part of the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House. That's 22 Democrats and 22 Republicans. And we sit down and try to collaborate on issues and find some areas where we can agree. Because I think at the end of the day, the public isn't really interested in the ideological disputes. They just simply want to know, what are you doing and what are you doing to solve the problems? And they don't see it through this starkly political lens, I think, that many who are avid followers of politics do. They look at it and say, what are you going to do to try to solve problems, to get things done? And so that's really what motivates me, and that's what motivated me to run for the House. And it's been great. I have to tell you that it's been a great thrill and a great honor to serve, and I look forward to 2018 with a lot of anticipation.
Now, with the time campaigning, with the year of service under your belt, what do you think your constituents sent you to Washington to do?
Get things done. Very simple. I think they want us to. I think they wanted to have a more fair tax system and fix the broken tax code. I think they want to see us solve problems, and that's really why I'm here. I think the healthcare system, the promises of the ACA have not been met, and small businesses and individuals have seen spiraling healthcare costs, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But I truly believe that we can find some consensus. We tried with the healthcare bill in the House. It failed in the Senate. So it's incumbent on us not to simply go back and try to reinvent the wheel here and come back with the same proposal. Let's find some things that'll be incremental fixes, reforms to the healthcare system that'll lower costs and enhance access for people. And that's what I'm about.
For you, what is your favorite issue to work on here in Washington?
My favorite issue, I have to say that I have a number of issues that have really interested me. But I think that probably issues that will genuinely benefit my district in upstate New York, and I'll give you one example. New York has, alone among the states, has an archaic law that dates from 1885. It's called the Scaffold Law. And that law increases the costs of construction, all construction projects in our state, by about 7%. Some say as high as 10%. So what I've proposed is a bill that would say, if you use federal funds on a project, if it's transit, if it's FEMA, if it's community development, if it's housing, you use federal funds on a road and bridge project, well then the standard of liability is going to be a standard that applies in the 49 other states, comparative negligence and not strict liability. This would greatly reduce the costs of all construction in New York State if we had a statewide reform. And so working on things like that are things that can bring tangible benefit and lower costs for people in upstate New York and throughout our state, because New York is a high tax state, it's a high cost state, and a lot of the reasons for that have to do with some crazy antiquated laws that special interests preclude you from changing. So that's one of the things that I'm very intent on getting done this year.
Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you, and look forward to a great 2018.